应该可以了吧？看得到吗？
我看看。Can you see anybody there? 我来加入一下再好。
All right. Okay, let me see. Yeah, I think so. Can you see my screen?
我也可以进来了。OK. All right.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, Jim, I can hear you loud and clear.
All right. So, sorry for the delay. We have a little bit technical problem. Sorry about that. And today we invited our leader from California, Leadership Council, and SMD from California, quarter million rank earner, going to give us a IUL deep dive and sales floor. This is a very technical topic, and Sam is the person who always doing research IUL and also give us a lot of contribution and sharing. So welcome Sam. So I think you are you can take it over.
Okay, sounds good. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So good evening, everybody. My name is Sam Liu. I apologize for us to delay a little bit. We had a little miscommunication coming in, but here we are, and I hope everybody can hear me loud and clear. And we're going to get started. For those who cannot hear me, let me see. Yes, right? I see yes. So I assume everybody can hear me well. Jim, you can hear me and you can hear me, correct? All right, perfect. All right. Again, thank you for being with me today. We have 253 people right now, and I think some more people will be joining us soon. My name is Sam Liu. I'm an SMD from California. I've been in this company for about 14 years. I'm currently SMD, 250,000 ring earner, and a Leadership Council member. Today, my topic is IUL deep dive. And a little sales flow. We have 1 hour, so I don't know how deep I'm going to go. I'm going to try my best, but let's get started, actually. All right. So, a lot of this you guys may have seen already. For those who have not, then this is great. For those who have, hopefully this is a refresher, and also to share with you guys how I do things with my clients, with my teammates, and when I go on an appointment. So the first thing I want to show everybody is the X curve. Let's review that X curve. And this goes about to talk about the law of decreasing responsibilities and the law of building wealth. As you can see, that forms that X right there. So it goes from left to right. As we are younger, typically speaking, when we are younger, the majority of us probably start with lesser wealth, right? We just graduate college, just start out with family. However, at a younger age, we probably tend to have more responsibility. Let me make sure that I have my little pen to highlight. As we are younger, yes, we don't have that much wealth, but we have wealth of responsibilities, correct? Not too much money, but we just get married, buying that house, having that child, and then we have the mortgage, we have to care for the young children, etc. Okay, so what is important at this stage in our life as we are younger, getting started? Well, obviously, protecting family is extremely important, correct? Especially if we are the breadwinner. So we want to make sure we protect our family. God forbid something were to happen to us. So what kind of tools do we use? Well, one thing comes to mind is term insurance, permanent insurance, and the whole idea about this is really to protect income. We can call it income replacement, or we can also call it mortgage replacement, right? Because we have that house on mortgage, and we want to make sure that our families are not impacted. God forbid something were to happen to us. Let me see if I can record this. Actually, I don't see that we're being recorded, I don't think. Let me see. I think we are being recorded. Sorry about that. All right. Now, what happens as we continue to our path, and hopefully we do well, and then we accumulate some wealth. But now we are getting a little bit older. Now we're getting older, and hopefully by then we have amassed a good amount of fortune saved up. So, what is important at this stage in our life? As we can see, our responsibility probably, hopefully, has decreased. Our mortgage is probably paid off. Our house has been paid off. And then our children probably have gone to college already and graduated. So now at this stage in our life, what is most important is what is protecting our money, correct? We were protecting our lives. Now we are protecting our money. Now, what are the areas that we should be concerned at this time on that quest to protect our money? Well, number one, we want to make sure that that money is invested, but does not go through the ups and downs of the market risk. Number one. Number two, we must have a good tax strategy. So hopefully by then, when we are ready to retire, we are not burdened with having to pay too much taxes. Well, comes wealth also comes with a lot of risk. You know, when we have a lot of money, then we oftentimes we get into lawsuits, correct? So we want to make sure that we don't get sued, things like that. So how do we do that? How do we achieve this this task when we get older and we have accrue more wealth? Well, now we want to protect wealth. And now what we want to do is what? We want to turn that money from the insurance into something that we can, first of all, carry for as long as we live. Maybe we want to make sure that we have long-term care protected. We want to make sure that it goes through a smooth transition to our next generation. We must have a tax strategy and asset protection. Now, what about other areas of concern? Well, Medicare, obviously, the majority of us in the U.S. will have that. And here is the long-term care that we must address, right? The high cost of medical care at old age. Now, here, I want to remind everybody a slide that probably the majority of us have seen, but nevertheless, I want to revisit to ensure that we all are on the same page. So let's take a look a little bit about the evolution of life insurance. The most typical, the most easy way of form of life insurance that we can understand are term insurance. And as the name suggests, is a term that covers us for a definite period of time, maybe 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, etc. So I use a analogy and I compared it with a typical, the old style, the first generation cell phones. And they do only one thing. They do only one thing. They protect family, just like the phone. It only has one function, which is just to make a phone call. Now, into the 70s, we have the so-called the permanent forms of life insurance, because some people may say, well, you know, that I don't want to be just protecting my family for 20, 30 years. I want to make sure that they are protected for as long as I live. So these are the permanent insurance. And here I want to compare with that first wave of the portable devices. I remember back in the 90s, this was the StarTAC, Motorola StarTAC, and that was the coolest thing that I ever seen in my life. It still does a phone call, and then we had the BlackBerry began to have some extra functions, correct? Now, up to this point, though, the insurance is still predominantly used for a family protection, God forbid something were to happen to me. But now I can protect my family for as long as I live. And I also can always leave a legacy because it's a permanent insurance. Now, into 1986 came the first wave of investment grade insurance in the form of a variable universal life, or VULs. So why do we want to use insurance as an investment vehicle? Because we want to grow our money at a faster rate, getting a better rate of return on long term, but we also want to save taxes. And as we all know, insurance, money that is grown inside an insurance plan, it grows tax defer, and we can access tax-free through policy loans. The next wave came in 1997, the IULs, and that really solved what VULs could not solve, and that was market risk. No market risk anymore, correct? And here we are basically into the modern type of life insurance, which is really revolutionized the whole industry. And here I use an example using a modern smartphone. As we all know, the smartphone, we use it for many, many things outside of making a phone call. Same thing for insurance. So now what are we talking about in the modern investment grade insurance? Now we're not only protecting our family, but we are also caring for ourselves. We want that asset to be used while we are alive, and that is called living benefits. Now, some examples that we can address in the form of living benefits are, number one, we can access the cash without having to pay taxes, tax-free access. Don't have to wait until 59 and a half to access, which in many cases, such as 401k, we have to wait until that age in order to access without any penalty. Money that we accrue in life insurance plan are financial aid friendly for college. And if we are already taking care of college expenses, we can utilize to supplement our retirement life. We can take care of our long-term care needs, and we can obviously protect our assets. All right. So I think a lot of people say this is more like a refresher for the foundation. So let's take a look at where the IUL is positioned. Now, on the investment horizon, on the right-hand side, we have the more aggressive type of investment vehicles, such as individual stocks. Maybe even more aggressive are probably the cryptos, right? Very aggressive, but obviously we may have a more upside. On the left-hand side, is very conservative, but very, very passive, and usually not very good on the growth. The IUL just happened to be in the center. It's not the most aggressive in the terms of market return, but it takes away the market risk, and yet it provides us a reasonable rate of return on the long term, maybe between 7 to 8%. Okay, so that's where it's positioned. Now, some data, this is up to, I think, 2020, and let's take a look at where the IUL is positioned. It's the fastest growing segment, whether in total premiums paid, in total number of policy issues, and in the growth in face amount. Here are the term, which is the green, the VUL, the gray, and the whole life. Okay, so this is up to 2020. Something a little bit more recent, this is up to Q1 of 2022. And again, it shows that the IUL segment is the fastest growth in the market segments. Okay, like that. During the first quarter, it grew by 28% year over year. Okay, and this is other categories in the insurance. This is the VUL. VUL grew about 13% year over year, and the whole life grew only about 10%, or actually it fell. Whole life is a very mature type of solutions that is not as flexible. Nevertheless, a lot of people still use it. All right. Another data that I think that this is very, very important is to understand what wealthy people do. There's a saying that if we want to be wealthy, the easiest strategy is to follow the wealthy. Whatever they are doing, we should just follow them. And on this research done by the Federal Reserve, it goes to state that the most wealthiest American, the top 10%, they own 55% of money stored or built up in life insurance plans. So we must ask why. Here, another data. The large size, the typically large size policies, 1 million or above, 1 million coverage or above is in the light green, And we can see that since 1987, it has steadily increased. If we were to look at policies, even bigger face amount, $2 million, is even more noticeable in the growth on that segment. So here we must ask why again. I'm an engineer by trade, and I have a curious mind, and I always ask, why is that? Why is the wealthy people is it that because they have more money now? Not necessarily. Is it because we are living longer? Well, perhaps. But ultimately, the main reason for this trend is taxes. And let's take a look at that IUL. Exactly what does it do? Well, let's take a look. Number one, it provides a fundamental function, which is protection to the family in the form of a tax-free death benefit. God forbid something were to happen to me, whatever coverage I have is passed on, is paid out to my family, income tax-free. Second of all, multi-layer tax protection. I can access tax-free. I can actually grow it tax-free accumulation. I can take tax-free distributions via policy loans. There are no tax penalties if I were to access before age 59 and a half. And there is no penalty for me to be switching between index strategies. Think about it. If I were to buy some stocks, let's say if I have some Apple stocks, and I decided to sell my Apple stocks to buy some Facebook stocks, assuming I made some money. Well, guess what? On that sale of the Apple stocks, I have to pay taxes on that gain. However, if I were to switch between my index strategies within that IUL plan, there are no tax consequences, no taxes. Now, greater income potential because of the way it protects against down market. There's no market risk. Last but not least, there are other advantages that we may use the IUL for, whether it's long-term care or whatnot. Now, let's take a look. In short, in summary, this is probably the biggest highlight using IUL, and that is tax advantages. To recap that, when we grow the money, the accumulation is tax deferred, no taxes. When we need to access money, the access is tax-free via policy loans. When we want to transfer between index accounts, there is no tax involved. When eventually we leave it for our family, it is also tax advantage, either income tax free, or we can pre-plan so that it can even be estate tax free if we do it properly. So there's a lot of advantages. Now, when I show this to my prospects, my clients, my friends, they'll say, well, this is so good. How come I never heard of this? How come I never heard of this tax free? Well, let's take a look. First of all, before I show some of the tax laws, I want to highlight something that is very important. I use this slide all the time because I think it's very, very impactful and it's really, really an eye-opening slide. So I will tell my prospect, let's say if I am going to invest, and what I must pay attention is taxes. Most people understand that they want to save taxes, but very few people realize the long-term impact of tax that will cause onto the wealth accumulation. So let's take a look. Let's say if I have an initial principal of $1, I'm going to invest it. And let's assume that I am able to double my money. $1 makes $1. Now I have $2. Okay, now I'm going to take that $2. I am going to reinvest and I'm going to double it again. Now I have $4. And then I'm going to reinvest. I'm going to double it again, $8. Do you see the trend, what I'm doing? I'm basically doubling my money, correct? Mathematically, as I am an engineer, now you don't have to be an engineer to understand this very easily. This is called 2 to the power of 1, 2 to the power of 2, to the power of 3, etc., etc. Now, if I were to double it 20 times, would everybody agree that that mathematical formula is 2 to the power of 20, correct? If I were to double my money 20 times. And there is the answer right there. It's 1,048,000 if I double my money 20 times. That is simple enough. We can plug it into our calculator, our Excel, or whatever. Now, I do understand that this is assuming I have not paid taxes, which is not possible because at some point I do have to pay tax, right? So let's take a look at what would be the impact if I have to pay tax on a yearly basis. Well, let's take a look. Again, I have my initial principal. I have $1 and I made $1. But now on this is gain, I am going to have to pay, assuming I have to pay taxes. For my simplicity, I'm going to say that I'm going to pay a third in taxes. So would everybody agree that my gain minus the tax plus that initial principal, I would have $1.67, correct? Now, if I were to take that money and reinvest it and pay that 33% on that investment gain, then I would again pay the taxes on that gain. And mathematically, would everybody agree, is now $1.67 to the power of 1, to the power of 2, to the power of 3, etc. Correct? Now, if I were to double it also 20 times, well, now, what is this number? What is this number? Well, I have two things that I know. I do know that if I never pay taxes, it's $1,048,000. I also know that I am adjusting in my example a 33% tax. So what would this number be? And I'll pause a moment. I'll let my audience take a guess. And usually they'll say, well, you know, it's maybe $670,000 because it's 33% tax. Or they'll throw in whatever number they may throw in on me. And they never, I've been doing this for 14 years and nobody ever got it closely correct. So I'll give them a little suspense, and at the end, I will give them the answer, and that answer is barely $28,000. Now, $28,000 versus 1 million, that is incredibly different, correct? I will explain to my audience that it does not mean that I pay $1 million in taxes. It simply means that the amount of the impact on that tax that I pay every single year, that is called tax drag. All right. The money that I have less to invest, that is called the tax drag. And over a long period of time, that is how big the impact is. And with this, I typically get the attention for most of my audience. They will say, wow, Sam, I never knew the impact is that big. Now, what is this solution? Now, first of all, let's take a look at from an example. I will show, you know, right here, I got $10,000 to invest, for example. And let's say I'm going to invest in a popular fund. And in this example, I'm going to use Fidelity Magellan. It's a very well-known fund. And I'm going to invest, let's assume from the beginning, 1963, and I'm going to invest $10,000. I'm going to leave it there until 2019. Well, guess what? If I never touched that $10,000, it grew to be 37 million. Now, I do know that I have to pay taxes. Assuming if I were to pay an average of 33% in taxes, guess what? If I have to pay that tax every single year, guess what? After paying taxes, I would only have 11 million. Well, I'll ask my audience, guess what? Would you be happy with $11 million? Most people would say, oh, yeah, that's good money. But if I were to ask, would you know that you lost $26 million in taxes? They would say, well, Sam, what can I do about it? And that's where I lead my conversation into the IUL, correct? That is a 69% loss when I only adjusted for 33% tax. Let me go ahead and get this out of the way. Sorry about that. All right. This is another example using another very well-known fund, Vanguard, which actually is very tax efficient. Same thing, I got $10,000. Now, this fund became available in 1976. I'm going to put $10,000. I'm going to leave it there untouched. And guess what? By the time I took my money in 2019, it grew to be $845. But if I had to pay my taxes, guess what? I lost 37%. The bottom line, my point is that we must understand how taxes impact us and how we must have a strategy to address taxes. Fortunately, though, everybody's seen this probably. Fortunately, the IRS give us 3 ways to legally pay taxes, correct? The tax every year, the tax defer, and the tax-free on the gain. And I'll ask my audience, right? I'll give some examples of tax every year, some of the popular instruments, the tax defer, and then I'll tell them about the tax-free. Most people would understand this very well. They'll understand this very well. They may be a little confused about what Roth IRA are, and they probably don't have a clue about the IULs. So I asked the client, hey, you know, where would you think that we should position our money? More toward the left-hand side or more toward the right-hand side? I'll ask that question, and most people would more often than not say, hey, I got to put something on the right-hand side, and that leads me into my IUL explanation. All right, now, because I live in the Silicon Valley and I'm an engineer also. I meet a lot of engineers. An engineer always wants to have justification. They always seem to want some proof. In a way, it's good. In a way, it's not that good. But anyway, I always prepare myself to show them. This is according to the IRS. In fact, under the tax code, life insurance is the most advantageous in all asset classes when it comes to taxes. But guess what? Since 1913, over more than 100 years ago, it was already defined some laws that benefit life insurance. Back then in 1913, under IRC or IRC code 101.A, it basically talked about income tax-free death benefit. In 1982, what it was defined under tax code 7702, that cash flow inside life insurance grows tax deferred, no tax on the accumulation. In 1984, it sets a maximum. This was a loophole that a lot of people, that the IRS realized very, very quick, because that they put a lot of money inside life insurance plans because it grew tax defer. So in 1984, what the IRS realized, they imposed a maximum limit. Cannot be unlimited amount dumped into the insurance plans. In 1988, it allows tax-free on the withdrawal. And then later on, it talked about accelerated. This will be for example, plans such as long-term care, et cetera, or chronic illness accelerated benefit. So more than 100 years ago, it was already predefined by the IRS. And over time, they passed other laws that gave favorable treatment for the tax treatment inside life insurance plans. Now, when we talk about IULs, let's understand first of all the design of it. Now, being an insurance, IUL is an insurance, correct? So with an insurance, obviously, what do we have? We have something called the cost of insurance, the COI, the cost of insurance, correct? Now, above that cost is what I use to invest my money or grow interest with. So that the first category is the minimum amount that must be paid into the plan in order for the IUL to function, a minimum. Above the cost, this is called the minimum amount, yes? And that amount goes for investment. So let's say that I pay a total of, I don't know, I'm going to give an example. Let's say $300. And let's say that the cost was $100. Let's just, for the sake of discussion, the cost was $100. I paid $300. Would you agree that now my investable amount is $200, correct? That goes for investment. Now, what if I'm able to put a little bit more money? Let's say I am able to put $500 now. Now, 100 is still the cost, but now my investable amount is 400, correct? Do you see that now that is being overfunded? Now I have more money for investing. Now, what if I am able to even throw in more money at it? Let's say if I'm able to throw in $1,000. Let's say that this is $1,000. Well, guess what? 100 goes to cost, and then 900 will go for investment. This will be 900. I hope that that is easy to understand. So from an investment point of view, should I put in more money or less money? Obviously, it's very easy to understand that the more money I throw at it, the more return I'm going to get, the more dollar I'm going to get, because the investment return is the same and the cost is the same whether I put 300 or 400 or 1,000, correct? Now, what do I do with this extra money that I throw at the plan? Well, now this is, by the way, this is called the concept of overfunding. That means that I'm putting more money above the cost. All right. So with all this money, what I can do is I can invest it in various different categories inside the IUL. I can throw it in the basic strategy that guarantees me a fixed defined interest, or I can throw it in at index account within the plan. And this is the focus of our discussion. Whether it's following a S&P 500 or a NASDAQ or Dow Jones or European indices, Asian indices, etc., etc. Okay, this is the VUL, so I'm not going to cover this for today's discussion. All right. Now, let me explain a few concepts on the IUL. The first concept I want to explain is the floor and cap. So let's take a look. What is the floor? Floor simply means that I will never lose money. I'm gonna change the color for my ink again. The floor simply means that I will never lose money. Even if the market dropped, I will never lose money. Of course, there is a trade-off, and that is the cap. The cap simply means that any predetermined cap defined by the insurance company, in this example, if it was 12, then if the market did above 12, the maximum I can get is that 12. That is why it's called the cap. All right, so put some numbers in play. Let's say on any given year, if the market, let's say I'm tracking that S&P 500. If the S&P 500 in any given year return 10%, well, what is my return? Well, it's 10, right? Because 10 falls within 0 to 12. What if the second year the market returned 20%? Well, that 20%, the maximum I can get is 12 because that is my cap, correct? What about the third year? Should the market drop minus or negative, guess what? I do not lose money because I have a floor, and that is a concept of floor and cap. Well, let's take a look. That is called the power of zero. A lot of people say, hey, Sam, I did not make any money. I got zero. Well, let's take a look at the power of zero. Let's assume that if I have, in a plan or mathematically, this does not even have to be insurance. Let's say if I have a stock, I have a 401k or I have a stock account that I have $500,000. Okay, I have $500,000 in my stock account. If in any given year my stock account lost 50% due to market risk. Well, how much money do I have now? 50% of 500. Now I only have $250,000, right? This is year one. This is year two. Let's say on the second year, the market rebounded 50%. Do I get all my money back? Well, guess what? No. Why? Because now I am growing 50% of my previous year's close. So 50% of 250 is actually 125. Added together is 350, correct? Now, what if I utilize an IUL with a cap? Same thing, when the market drop, same thing, let's say I have $500,000, just for my illustration purposes, okay? My cash value, all right? My cash value, 500. On year one, the market dropped minus 50. But remember that it has a floor, so I don't lose money, right? So out of the 500,000 that I have in the account, I actually preserved it because there's no market risk. On year two, this is year one and this is year two, right? Let's say on year two, the market rebounded, and let's assume my cap was only 10%. Well, guess what? It's 10% of what? Of my previous year close, right? So it's 10% of 500,000, which is 50,000. Guess what? Now I have 550. Do you like this one or do you like this one? Obviously, that's very simple answer. And here is a little graph there. If you fall through a hole, it's hard to get back up. However, if I never have to get back out of the hole, the only way I can go is up. I can stay flat, but I would never have to climb out of the hole. Let's take a look at in real terms, the power of zero. Well, this black line is the actual S&P 500 since the last 20 years, from 2000 until 2020. The actual return for the S&P 500 actually only returned 4.564%. And that is because this is the IT bubble, this is the mortgage crisis. 2019, this was the COVID-19. I think this was COVID. I think that was COVID, et cetera, right? But if I apply the floor and cap, guess what? When the market goes down, I never drop. When the market goes down, I don't drop. When the market goes down, I don't drop. Actually, I return during the same period of time, 7.01 versus 4.64. Which one is better? Obviously, 7.01, correct? All right. So let's illustrate how this works again. So let's assume in my example here, I am going to define, let's say my floor is 0.75 and my cap was 15%. Let's assume that that was my parameters. So let's take a look. Assuming in 2000, year 2000, January, and let's assume that I have $1,000 in my account in 2020. Well, let's assume that at the end of the first year, 1 year later, my $1,000 dropped 30%. Now I only have 700. That is called what? My market return lost 30%. But remember that I have a floor, and my floor in this example is 0.75. Well, guess what? Even the market drop, I actually don't lose. And in fact, I get 0.75%. The second year, the market continues to drop, drops another 21%. Now I only have $550. Well, I don't lose money, right? I got that floor protection with a little 0.75% minimum interest. The following year finally rebounded a little bit. It returned 10%. I'm kind of happy. I'm not above water yet. I haven't made up to my 1,000 yet, but nevertheless, it grew. But guess what? There I get 10.9 because I'm within the cap. I'm within the 15% cap. And the following year, the market finally rebounds something nice over 15%. But because my cap is 15, therefore I only get 15. So let's take a look. If we were to say this, I went from $1,000 over these 4 years, I ended up with $710, correct? That, my friends, I lost money. But because I have this up and down, well, let's take a look. Well, guess what? At the end of year 1, I didn't lose money and I have 0.75, correct? Well, then I made $7.50. The second year, the market lost, but I did not lose money. I still get my $7.50. The third year, the market made 10.9. So I make 10.9 of the previous high, my previous close. And the last year, the market made 15 for me. So I'll add 15% onto that, and I get $12.95. Do you see, everybody? Does everybody see that? Even though that the market actually dropped, I actually made money. And the difference there is 82%. So the conclusion of the IUL, how it works, is that the IUL return is not based on market direction. It's not. Because you see that the market direction is negative. 1, 2 is negative. But actually, it's based on market fluctuation. As long as it does this, I'm going to make money. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, very good. Now, a lot of people come to me and say, hey, Sam, I think IUL is only for the rich people because you got to overfund it. Well, let's take a look. Is that true? Absolutely true. Definitely true. So I want to introduce to everybody Mr. Wealthy Rich. Mr. Wealthy Rich. He's very wealthy. He's a Silicon Valley CEO. His company just went public, IPO. All right. So let's take that he's 45 years old. And because he's wealthy, he's going to open an IUL worth of $10 million protection. That simply means if something were to happen to him, his family receives $10 million. Because he's wealthy, every year he's going to throw in $500,000 in premium. He's wealthy, right? He's got a lot of money, and he throws into the plan $500,000 per year. That's called annual premium from 46 years old until 65 when he retires. The total amount of money that he throw into the plan is $10 million. $10 million. Yes, he's rich. Well, guess what? Let's assume that the rate of return was a modest 6.15%. Is 6.15 reasonable? I think so. It's definitely understating the actual S&P, right? It's conservative. Well, at a rate of 6.15, his money would have grown to $70 million by the time he's 65 years old. And guess what? Should he pass away anytime during this time, that last column is the death benefit for his family. Guys, remember, we started with 10 million, right? If he were to pass away at 65, his family actually received 27 million. Now, Mr. Wealthy Rich, he is healthy and he did not die. Well, at 66, he's now retired. He's going to enjoy his life and he's not going to throw in money at it anymore. He's going to take from this $17 million. How much money can he draw for his retirement? Well, guess what? He is able to draw $1.4 million a year for every single year until he turns 85 for 20 years. He draws 1.4 million for 20 years, a total of cashing out 28 million bucks. He's rich, right? Now, eventually he passes away. Let's say he lived to 90 years old. He's already taken 28 million. And then let's say if he were to pass away at 90, he still leaves his family 3 million bucks. Is that cool? Now, this is Mr. Wealthy Rich, right? Most of us, I am not wealthy rich. So let's meet the second person. And I want to introduce everybody, Mr. Average Joe. So let's take a look at Mr. Average Joe. He's really, really average. He's 45 years old. He does not make a lot of money, okay? So, but he loves his family and he's going to protect his family with only $250,000 because that's what he can afford. $250,000. Remember that Mr. Wealthy Rich, he had a $10 million policy. Well, Mr. Average Joe only has $250,000. Now, Mr. Average Joe, he said, well, you know, I think I can save about $1,000 a month, about $1,000 a month. So he goes on to save $1,000 a month, well, a little bit over. Let's assume that he saves $15,000 annually, $15,000 annually. He's a Mr. Average Joe. Now, same thing, he goes to pay for his plan 20 years from 46 years old to 65. How much money did he throw in altogether? Well, $300,000 altogether, right? $15,000 for 20 years. Now, let's also assume that he grows at a rate of 6.15. That is his cash growth. At 65, he has grown his little retirement portfolio or account to be $519,000. If he were to pass away any given time, that's the death benefit for his family. Again, Mr. Average Joe is also healthy, and now he's going to retire at 66. He's not going to put any more money, and he wants to see how much money can he draw. Well, at the same rate of calculation, he can draw $43,000 a year for how many years? From 66 years old until 85, just like Mr. Wealthy Rich. Well, he is not, Mr. Average Joe took $43,000 a year for 20 years, and that total is $867,000, correct? And let's say that he goes on to live until age 90, he still lives $95,000 for his family. Now, in conclusion to Mr. Wealthy Rich and Mr. Average Joe, I think that we can safely conclude that the IUL can be for the wealthy just equally for the middle class. And I hope that you agree with me that the plan is not just for the wealthy. The plan is the person who has the discipline rather than how much money he has. All right. Now, the next question I get a lot is that how is that possible that, you know, that the insurance company can guarantee we never lose money? A lot of people say, well, that's simply too good to be true. Let me introduce everybody the concept of hedging, and how that works. Well, let's say that after, you know, let's say in my IUL account, after all costs, I have $1,000 in the account. What the insurance company does with that $1,000, they're going to invest it on my behalf, and they're going to do that by placing that $1,000 into two buckets. Call it two buckets. $950 in one bucket and $50 in the other bucket. With that first bucket, that $950, the insurance company is going to invest for me in high yield, high grade bonds, and maybe government bonds, maybe corporate bonds, high grade, actually, not high yield, high grade bonds. On average, on long term, a bond return, we can safely assume 5%. That is pretty safe. So what happens to that $950 growing at a rate of 5% approximately? Would you agree that after 1 year, I would get back to that $1,000, right? Earning about 5%. So now my $1,000 is preserved, correct? Now I have the $1,000 in the account. All right, now what does the insurance company do with that second bucket of money? That second bucket of money, the insurance company is going to negotiate with an investing company, maybe a Morgan Stanley, maybe a Goldman Sachs, and they say, hey, you know, I'm going to buy some call options. This is called the call options. And let's assume that the insurance company is going to say, I want to buy call options for the S&P 500. And what the call option does is the insurance company tells the investment company, if my $1,000, if this $1,000, if the market does grow, let's in this example grows 12%, then that $1,000 earns 12%. 12% is the gain for that given year, and that 12% needs to be paid into that cash value, turning it into 1120. So that's easy to understand, correct? Now, should the market drop? What if the market was negative? Well, guess what? Well, then the $1,000 from the bucket would have gone to 900, right? Lost 10%. But because the call option is in place, then what happens is that there is no interest, but there is no loss either. And the price for that is that $50 that $50 that we spend, that the insurance company spent to buy this call option, to ensure that we are between 0 to 12%. Anything above 12, the investment company takes it. Anything below 0, the investment company absorbs it. And the investment company charges that call option $50. So that is what the concept of hedging, how the methodology works behind the scenes. Okay, now let's move forward. Now, of course, we must understand that being an insurance, there's a cost of insurance, remember? And everybody should be concerned about cost, right? We want to be tax efficient, but we want to also understand cost. Now, the red is represented for the cost, and the green is represented to be the gain of the inside the plan. So as you can see, for IULs, the cost is very high or relatively high during the first 10 years. During the first 10 years, as you can see, during the first 10 years, the red bar is pretty high. But if I were to spread over time, this is what it looks like. The first 10 years is relatively high, but after the 11th year, it drops. So I want to ask everybody, do we prefer option 1, pay 10-year, or I should write this. Oops. Suffer 10 years and enjoy rest of life, right? Because think about it, I have nominal cost at the end, but all this is what? Tax what? Free. Can you imagine if this was a 401k plan? If this was a 401k plan, it'll be low cost in the beginning, but very high cost at the end in the form of taxes, right? So if we understand, if we live it for a long term, then the cost becomes negligible if I have that long-term steadiness, discipline, and I structure my plan correctly. All right, so let's take a look at a few limitations, benefits and limitations, pros and cons. The IUL, flexible premium. Remember, we had that what? The minimum, the guideline, and the maximum, correct? So that is called flexible premium. Of course, we have to meet that minimum. Number 1, number 2, tax defer and tax-free access via policy loan. Number 3, it provides that growth opportunity with transparency. This I love. Why? Because let's say if we were to select the IUL tracking the S&P 500, I can always go to Google Finance and look for S&P 500 return, and I can exactly know what the return was. It's totally transparent, and I like that. Next, flood protection. I never lose money. Next, no impact on college financial aid for families that have children going to college. And they are living benefits, right? I can utilize it for college. I can utilize it for long-term care, for retirement supplement, etc., etc. Now, there are some limitations as well. Number one, not suitable for short-term investing. If I have some money, I want to save it for maybe 3 years later, I want to buy a house, and I would say, hey, let me open an IUL for 3 years, then cancel it after that. No, do not do that. Not suitable. Number two, surrender charge, surrender penalties. If I cancel my plan too early, I might suffer some charge. I will actually. Next, poor funding design. If I always just do minimum payment, then it's not going to perform well. Last but not least, the poor health. If I have poor health, then I may not qualify. All right. So these are some of the pros and cons or limitations. Now, when I go in the field with client, I tend to always show some data and I show some references, right? I always show a good book. There's plenty of good books. This is one of them that I read. This is another one. I love this Power Zero book. And in fact, Mr. Ed Slott is one of the most well-known CPAs. He's a CPA, by the way. He doesn't work for WFG, and he does not sell insurance, and he'll tell you in his videos, right? So you can always look up in the YouTube and look for Ed Slott, and look it up in YouTube, right? And he'll talk about what is the best vehicle to save taxes. Now, because today I had to talk about the IUL flow, so I want to sort of I explain all this to the client. And last but not least, I got to close, right? So usually I'll take a trainee with me, right? My business partner who is probably somebody who is, sorry about that. How come I cannot move this? Yes. Okay. My business partner, I'll invite my trainee, my business partner, to provide me a little testimonial. Maybe most likely I have already helped his family set up his plan, and I'll invite him to talk about 3 to 5 minutes of his personal experience with how he has benefited from the IUL. Now, then I'll remind the client, hey, the importance of being a responsible parent or responsible adult, protecting the family, the importance of never losing money, the big impact if we can save on taxes, and the financial aid friendly, and etc., correct? I'll remind them a lot of time. I will probe a little bit on sense of urgency, maybe reminding them, hey, you know what, while you're still healthy, you want to get yourself a plan because, you never want to leave any regrets. Are reminding them that the next birthday, make sure that if they want to have a plan, try to do it before their next birthday or 6 months away from the next birthday. And then I'll ask them, right? I'll remind them, I'll encourage them, I'll ask them, I think this plan will be a great fit for your family. And I'll ask them, wouldn't you agree? And I'll shut my mouth. I'll be quiet. And that's, I'll let them answer. I'll let them think about it. And usually, yeah, sure, absolutely. I think so. They may have some question. I'll answer some questions. And then if they don't have any questions, then I'll say, I suggest we take advantage of the program by helping you fill out an application to see if you can qualify for the plan. And then I'll shut my mouth again and I'll see what they say. If they say, yes, Sam, I think this is great. Let's go ahead and try it. And then I'll explain the process. Yes, and this is really typically what I do. Of course, today I went over almost 1 hour, and usually my appointments are not going to be that long. Today I went very extensive, I went very comprehensive, but my appointment total should be about, should be hopefully within the hour, and that includes my front chit chat, my warm up, my rapport, and my closing. Okay, so I can't believe I finished in time. I really cannot believe I spoke so fast and I thought I wasn't going to finish, but I surely did. I still have 2 minutes to spare, and I'll leave the mic open for a lot of, for people. Whatever question you might have, go ahead. You can speak up, or I guess you have to type it up. I guess type up your questions. Okay. I'll leave it for a few minutes. Let's see. Wow. There's so many things. Loud and clear. Yes. Okay. We can, okay, so Aman, can you explain a little bit about access? Great question. How do I access it, right? So I can access it via a policy loan. yes, to access it, right? Which allows me to take my money without having to pay taxes. Now, why do I want to use loan and versus withdraws? Withdraw, right? Why do I use because if I take withdraw, then my principal is tax-free, but my gain is taxable if I were to withdraw. Okay, if I were to take a loan, then it is tax-free across the board. Of course, I may have to pay a little interest though. Typically speaking, interest during first 10 year 1 through year 10, it should be less than 1%. And after 11th year or plus, interest is typically 0%. So that's the workaround, that I pay no interest to access my money. Okay, I hope I answered that question. Let's continue with the next question. Let's see, loud and clear. Excellent presentation. Thank you very much. Let's see, Grace, thank you very much. How do you explain to people who thinks that insurance company takes too big of a chunk of profit, high cost, low return? Well, actually, hopefully by my presentation, at the end of the day, you are clear, right? At the end of the day, there's no free lunch. So it depends on how you look at it, right? Do you prefer to pay cost of insurance, or do you prefer to pay taxes? And typically speaking, if you understand it correctly, you explain it, usually the cost of insurance would always be lower than the taxes you pay. Let's see. Thanks for sharing. Great. Thank you. Let's see. What else? Same things but different. Winner always does the same thing different. Yes. On the side of impact investment taxation between 2 to the power 21. Do you mean every year you deposit the same amount? Yes, that's assuming that I am. No. I'm saying that. Let's see. This is Eldora Zhang, right? Very good. All right. So that hypothetical question. Let me answer Eldora's question real quick. Let me go ahead and close this out, and let me go to Eldora's question. Let me see if I can do that. I'm trying to maneuver this. Give me a moment. Let's see. For Eldora. This is for Eldora. All right, cool. All right. It doesn't mean that I put my money, double my money every time. It simply means that I double my money. Let me go ahead and I double my money every time. I didn't say that I double my money every year. Okay, so this is a hypothetical. Obviously, in real world, there's no way that I'm going to double my money every single year. All right, so this is simply means that I have $1, I double it to another $1. Now I have two reinvested. Reinvest my 2 from the previous year, and I'll double again. Now I have 4, I'll reinvest my 4, and let's say I double it again. That's simply what it means, Eldora. I hope I explain your answer your question. Let's see. Thanks a lot for clarifying my questions. Fluent presentation. Thank you. 0 interest to get a loan after 10 years. Do you have to pay back? Jing Spitling. Very good question. Do you have to pay back? Jing, I want to ask you a question. I'm going to make you a little deal, Jing, okay? Let me see. Let's go ahead and do something very, very simple, okay? I want to take this, and I want to draw something for you, Jing. Let's say that if you have a $50,000 car, Toyota loan, you bought a car, Toyota, yes, and you loan it. All right, and they're going to give you a loan with 0% interest forever. Mrs. Jing, I want to ask you, do you want to pay back, Mrs. Jing? No penalties, no hidden costs, no fine prints. Loan with 0 interest forever. Would you want to pay back? The answer is yes, if you want. Or no, because you don't have to. Right? Now, of course, something's got to give. So let's say that Jane, you bought this Toyota, you took out a $50,000 loan, you never paid it back. Well, it's got to come from somewhere, right? So this loan will go to deduct from the death benefit. So if that death benefit was $500K and you have a $50,000, then that would have to be subtracted. So your family will receive 450K. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? I hope so. Of course, there is interest that you accrue here. And that interest will be credited back into the policy. That is some technicalities. I'm not going to have time to explain. Ask your SMD about it. So yes, if you want to, okay? And no, because you don't have to. All right, Jing, I hope I answered your question and I have a little fun with it. All right, let's see. What else? Wow, there's so many questions, man. You guys gotta let me go to dinner. No, I'm kidding. I'll keep answering questions. Let's see. I don't know. I don't know where all the questions went. What happened if the insurance company go bankruptcy? All right, very, very good question. How do we answer that? All right, well, number one, insurance. First of all, we have to explain to the client that financial industry is the highest regulated industry and insurance companies happen to be in the financial industry, right? So I will explain. FDIC for the bank, SIPC for investments, and Guarantee Association for insurance companies. Except that insurance company has double layer protection because it has reinsurance and also has the government entities that step in. All right. Interest index or index UL. Ran Shretha. I'm not sure if I understand. Interest index or index UL. I think it's index UL. I'm not sure if I exactly understood your question. Let's see. Raja, increase the DB if you pay back. Okay, that's good. Yep, you can do that too. But the cost of insurance will be higher toward the end. Does cap will they change every year? Yes. Jing, Jigar, Makwana. Yes, the cap rate will change every single year, or at least it is subject to change every single year. And for that, you will have to invite me to a cup of coffee. I'll explain it to you more in depth, or you can ask your SMD and he can explain it to you for free. Just kidding. Let's see. What does it mean, deferred growth? Yes, deferred growth simply means that while it's growing, you're not paying taxes. Recording, you have to ask your SMD. Let's see what else. 6.1 return is after fees. Yes, that's well, the 6.1 is the assumed rate of return. The illustrated results are after fees. Yes. Let's see. What about 10-year loan taken? Do we have to pay interest? What about, yes, you have to pay interest, and that's called a wash loan. Yes. After 10 years, you get charged interest. Let's say you get charged 3%. Insurance company typically would credit you back 3% as well. So that's called a wash loan. All right, guys, we went over seven minutes. I hope that everybody was able to pick up some nuggets, whether it's the knowledge or the flow or answering questions that I typically do for my clients. I want to appreciate everybody for taking time to be with me today, and I certainly look forward for having you guys in our next presentation next week. All right, guys. I am going to drop off and enjoy everybody. Have everybody a great evening. Take care, guys.
Thank you, Sam.
All right, Jim. Take care. Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Please upload the slide.